Okay, so I hope we're live now. I was having some issues starting the stream, which was a little weird, but we should be good to go now. Hopefully, anyway. But we're going to be talking about Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, episode 5 in today's video or stream, whichever way you're watching this, either later on or now. And before we get into the stream, let me know in either the live comments or the comments later on after the stream. What are your guys' thoughts on episode 5 in Rings of Power rating wise as a whole? I'm going to go through, this is probably going to be a longer stream because it's only going to be me tonight. So I'm going to, get through it all. I have pretty much all of the scenes written down. We're going to go through my notes and all of that. And there's a couple of things I want to talk about before we actually start talking about the episode as a whole. I wanted to kind of address something where I've seen it a lot on a lot of Lord of the Rings channels. Mainly I watch Men of the West. Their Lord of the Rings channel is fantastic, but I've seen a lot of toxicity, and I want to address that. It's okay to like the show or to dislike the show, whichever way you feel on it. But don't personally attack people, right? Whether that be commenters or I guess me, but I can handle it. It's okay. But yeah, so I wanted to address that. You can definitely have your arguments, reasons why you like the show, and maybe somebody doesn't like the show. But yeah, try to keep it respectful and all that as well. And also in the stream, we're going to be covering spoilers for not only episode 5 of Rings of Power, but the episodes before. And also we're going to be covering kind of some book content that could spoil the show as well on things that haven't happened yet. So these were all some things I wanted to kind of address and talk about before we get into the actual episode. So yeah. I'm going to give my overall rating of the episode and my kind of brief summary of the season and the episode as a whole at the end. I kind of have something typed out already that I kind of wanted to talk about at the end. So let me pull up my note sheet and we'll get going on the actual episode as a whole. And let's see, where is my chat? There it is. Sorry, guys, I wasn't answering chat. My bad. How is the Rings of Power faring in terms of ratings? I know by critics, it's not doing well. For me, I will give my rating at the end, but I guess I'll say it as here as well. I'll support my rating more at the end, but I'll give it. So I gave this episode a 5. So my rankings for all the episodes, for ratings wise, the first 2 episodes were a 6. Not on a lot happened in the episode to where I felt as though I should give it more of a negative review. Episode 3, I think I was a lower end 6, I think. And then episode 4, I had a 4. I had a really bad rating on episode 4. And then this episode, I'm in the middle. I said a 5. I didn't really like it, but yeah. I loved it, but I personally prefer slow character development over action. Okay, I'm glad you like it, Scoobert. I liked bits of pieces of this episode. Okay. Rings of Power is absolute garbage in my opinion. I only watch it because I love Tolkien, but every episode only serves to make me laugh and talk about it. So, Hugo, I think I'm kind of in the same boat with you. I'm trying to be coming at it from as many different angles as possible, where there's a side of me that wants to always bash the show because of lore. It's just not, the show has gone so far away from the Silmarillion, which they can't even use, but I mean the book material they can use, that I instantly just kind of hate it for that idea. And even this is my problem, is I'm going to get into the parts that really drive me nuts, is there's so many logical fallacies within this show, and the consistency is pretty rough. But we'll talk about that later on. I don't want to get too far into it. I want to go through it formulaically as an episode and talk about what I liked or didn't like. Also, the One Direction haircuts, yeah, they don't make any sense. None of the elves really look like elves besides Gil-galad, but yeah. So, not season 1. Episode 5 starts with the Hardfoots, and this is either a good or bad sign, depending on who you ask. And this is something interesting because we didn't see them all last episode, so it's kind of interesting to keep up with the Hardfoots. So I want to give you guys my interpretation of the Hardfoots going into this scene. So they are kind of alone by each other, like the Hardfoot family, the main family or whatever. They kind of seem like they're kind of off by themselves, like they got left behind or whatever. It's kind of what it's implied by ending of episode 3. And the episode kind of starts with the Meteor Man, and I always forget the girl's name for the Harfoot's the main one. And we have this idea that she's trying to teach him the language again, and it's a, you know, it's whatever. But there's a key point in here where it gets to the point that this Meteor Man thinks that he is a danger, right? And there's a good idea here that we could have some really good dialogue, that we could have some development with these two characters. But no, it goes to the Harfoot girl, and she goes, "You're not, because you're good." Yeah, Nori, that's it, Nori. And it's something that we're going to get back into in another scene, but this opening scene kind of already set me up on what to expect dialogue-wise from the episode, because it's just not a good response. Saying, you know, you're not a danger because you're good. You're here to do good. It's like, is he really, though? Like, he's already done some pretty weird stuff. But yeah, I will say, Hugo, if you've never read like the Tolkien stuff, I kind of agree with you that it is easier to watch because, for one, you're not going into it. You're not seeing things in a negative light. Like, why aren't they doing this storyline from the book that's much better than what they're doing on the show? Right? So just watching it as a passive viewer, maybe, who has never like read any of that, it's a lot easier to digest, I think. But we'll talk about it a little later, and I'll have my issues that aren't even lore related. But yeah. So that kind of was a big disappointment to me. It's like we could have had some development here talking about the past events and getting more into the stranger as a character, because again, we still really don't know too much about him at this point. And we're episode 5 at the beginning. I'm talking about the beginning of the episode. We still don't know a lot about him. So I thought this was a missed opportunity. And this kind of leads us to Nori and the stranger. They come back with the family of Harfoots. It's just their family, by the way. Okay, so this is important for later on in the episode because this really bothered me. It's just them, okay, and they start to take off or whatever, and they're talking about where they have to go. It would appear they're going to Mirkwood because they say the Old Forest, but the Old Forest, like the Fellowship of the Ring, Old Forest on the like western side of Middle-earth, it doesn't seem like that's the direction they're going. And also, like, I just don't think that makes sense for the story at the moment. So I think they're probably going to Mirkwood. There's also, I think, a road that's called the Old Forest or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of where they're headed, more or less. It's my taking. And then we have a song that kind of overplays it, and we get just a cut of them walking and going through these places or whatever. It's kind of reminiscent of like Frodo, Sam, Merry, Pippin, and Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, where they're kind of going through these different landscapes, and it's kind of like a cut type thing. And the scenery looks great, like usual. I thought there were some really great shots of the atmosphere and the landscapes. But my big complaint is this whole section of the episode took up, I think, 6 minutes. So this is something else I want to talk about when I look at the episode compared to someone else. So there are different ways of watching episodes. I have now kind of taken it to when I'm doing streams, right? Especially for House of the Dragon and Rings of Power, I want to very much digest what I'm watching and take notes. So what I would do is between every single like scene, and I'm talking by scene, I mean like if we're with the Harfoots, I will watch the Harfoot segment, and then as soon as they go to something else, I will pause it, write down my notes, digest what I liked and didn't like about that period of time, right? And that is a much deeper way to look at an episode. You're going to pick up on more things. You're going to logically look at a lot more things. So when I talk about people that would like this a lot more, if you're just going into it looking for something maybe fun, you haven't read the lore, or someone that isn't really looking at, maybe they have this on in the background while they're playing, it's going to be a bit different. And Nikki brings up a good point. Like, I'm going to talk about in this episode, there's a lot of shit that's going on that just is bad, and especially as we get to Numenor, I'll really start to dig into it. But yeah, and Isildur, yeah, because of the time crunch that they've put themselves into, They really kind of screw themselves, and I agree with you on that, Nikki. The scenery always gets me, although I do like that a bit of it. Yeah, no, the scenery is very good. A lot of the time, the shots of just literally like any shots they do of like the landscape, the environment are always very good. All the scenes in Numenor seem like a waste of time. So one of the big things I was going about and I was talking to one of my friends about is that if you look at Numenor, what changed from episode 4's ending to episode 5's ending? And we're going to talk about that when we get to Numenor. I have a lot to say on Numenor. It's by far my least favorite plot, and there's a lot of things that just I talked about in episode 4 that just don't make any sense. So we'll get there when we get there, but yeah. Makes sense, Matthew, on the lore stuff. We'll get to the Galadriel fight scene, but yeah, it was not good at all. And I'm going to repeat multiple times in this episode, the way they treated the Numenorians and Numenor as a whole is terrible. This Isildur is such a... Yeah, Isildur is not great. They've kind of butchered his entire character. But yeah, so for you guys kind of asking about like Numenor, they... Like, about Isildur, like how long he lives. Numenor has like... They have longer life than the average like human, but usually it's like 200 years to like... If you're really pushing it, like maybe 250. That's like where most of them are supposed to probably kind of live to. Maybe 300. But definitely not thousands of years like how it's kind of being portrayed on the show. But yeah, let's keep moving on. So, we have these beautiful scenery in the background, and that's kind of it. The first 6 minutes of the episode really hasn't established much. We kind of know that the Harfoots are traveling, and they're trying to kind of teach... pretty much the Stranger Things, right? They're trying to... okay, I dropped a title for a TV show. That was kind of funny. But they are kind of trying to, like, get him up to more society terms, like, trying to get him to be able to speak and stuff, and it's like, okay, whatever, right? We don't really know much more about the Stranger. It was kind of, in my opinion, it was kind of meaningless. But that is our first 6 minutes. Now, we get into scene 2, which... I thought this was kind of awkward to introduce at this point of the show. So we have these priest-looking figures. They inspect the Meteor Man's landing site. They just seem like there's some sort of cult following of maybe Melkor and/or Morgoth, whichever name you want to use. And that's kind of all we get. So they're kind of looking for him, and that's all that is. Now, what I do think is weird is, why are we introducing more subplots into the story when the story as of right now is at a snail pace? That's the problem. Okay, so you guys are saying 300 to 400 years? Okay, my bad. Sounds good. Just know they live longer than the average human. Really. Do I have to read the Silmarillion to start Rings of Power? Or should I skip Silmarillion and read the Fall of Numenor once it's out and then start Rings of Power? I've only read Hobbit and... Okay, Zen. So if you want to read about... In the Silmarillion, if you want to read about the events they're going to be covering, I would just read... What I think is really funny is the Silmarillion is really only the first stage. Skip to a certain section. It's towards the end. And it talks about the Second Age. It focuses a lot on Numenor and then kind of also focuses a bit on... The next chapter kind of talks a bit more about the elves and their kind of role with Sauron. You don't need to read any books to watch Rings of Power. Really, the story is completely different. I'm not even... Yeah. So, Zen, they're vastly different. Like, you having knowledge about what happens to Silmarillion doesn't really matter to Rings of Power, but if you wanted to know the background of what does happen, that's where you would want to look at it. Most of Elros's descendants live 304 years. It's suggesting Aldarion and Elrondis that other Narians have in a shorter lifespans. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so we have these priests, and we're basically left to imply that they're looking for the Meteor Man. That's really all we get. There's not really anything that they introduce there. They don't even really talk in the scene. It's just them looking menacingly, I guess, and weird and all that. Also, the Silmarillion is the best, like, looking Tolkien book. Like, the cover of it, fantastic. Like, it's literally right there. It's one on the left. You can't really see it because there's a glare. Also, let me know if you guys can notice. I did put a light. I had put in one of my old lights on, like, my left, so it kind of lit up, like, the other side of my face a bit more. Let me know if that helps. You can kind of see it in my lenses when I look to that side of the room, but yeah, I wanted it to kind of help just light up the background a bit. Let me know if that helps at all, or if it just kind of, it's just there. It's not gonna look majorly different. It's just something I wanted to add. The Silmarillion is the best Tolkien book. Hugo, that is a hot take. I won't lie. That's a hot take. I do think it's a good book though, but that is a very hot take. I'd love to see what other people's opinions on that are. I would say I like the Lord of the Rings, then the Silmarillion, then the Hobbit, I think. I don't know. That's a tough one to answer. Okay, so then we skip to scene 3. Now the scene 3 really bothered me. So scene 3 is we get Adar and he's talking with the orcs, and the orcs are like, "Hey, the tunnel's done," or whatever, and all of that. And Adar basically goes to this orc and goes, "Okay, give me your arm and put it in the sun," because he's like admiring the sun or whatever. And the orc starts vampire melting, basically. I cannot make this up. The orc starts like burning, like he's going to melt like a vampire. And I'm like, okay, so we have this in this episode. Let's go back, right? Where the episode where I forget what the elf is called that's at the tower. I forget the names in the show because I don't care about most of the characters that aren't like actual lore characters. But he was in this little thing where they're slaving away. And there are orcs. Like, yes, they do have like hoods up and stuff, but they would have been getting burned if this is the case. And this is what I'm talking about with continuity and consistency within a show. You can't switch up how things react. Like, you can't switch up how the sun affects orcs within your own show. Like, you can play around it and be a bit different on it, like, but stay consistent. So Lord of the Rings stayed pretty consistent, right? Where the Uruk-hai were the ones that can move outside, even with sun. The orcs could not. They needed Sauron's kind of, clouds, basically, and all the storms covering the sun so that they could be effectively used, right? They were just a bit weakened, is all it was. Like, when they're in the sun, they're a bit weakened. So a good way of like showing this is when the Rohirrim come to the Battle of Minas Tirith. When there's kind of this light that comes over the hill and they are charging at the orcs. It's kind of the same thing with the Uruk-hai. They do it very similarly. It's kind of meant to show like the sun's creeping in, so they're kind of getting weaker and they're getting less disorganized. That's how Lord of the Rings handles it. The Hobbit kind of really didn't handle that at all. They kind of just said orcs can walk in daylight, whatever, it's fine. Right? That's kind of how they did it. And then this show has basically tried to flip-flop multiple times and ways on how they do the show and how they handle the orcs and the sunlight, and it's just something that bothers me. So Adar also mentions that soon the sun will be gone. Basically, again, referencing back to maybe how Sauron uses the clouds and the weather to disrupt the sun, which, okay, so that's going to happen. My question, though, is if he's going to do this sort of power where the sun's going to be gone soon, why does he need the tunnel? But who knows? We'll see how that goes. But that's kind of all of scene 3, really. Still don't get any real development into Adar's character. We don't know who he is. We don't really know any of his backstory. We know he's an elf. That's the extent of his character. We know he's an elf. We can infer he was maybe a corrupted elf that was maybe one of the first ones being tortured to become an orc, and maybe it didn't go all the way. I don't know. Because we just don't know any information about this character. But yeah. I did not think the elves would travel so far south. I hope they run into Entwives. That's possible. I still haven't read any of Tolkien's books, although I'm too buried between Fire and Blood and the Witcher series. Okay, let me know how you like the Witcher series. Honestly, I found Lord of the Rings very hard to read. It's a difficult read. It's not very fluid, but with the Silmarillion, I was anxious for the next chapter every time. The tension is immense. That's fair. Okay, I could see that. So is this Adar guy supposed to be a servant of Sauron? He seemed pretty pissed at the old guy, assuming he was Sauron. He's supposed to be a rival of Sauron. I couldn't tell you, Matthew. That's the problem. We're 5 episodes in, over half the season. I have no idea what this guy's motivations are. Because he seems like he's working on his own motivations, because he can't really be a follower or something of Sauron if he's trying to be a god himself, and he doesn't like Sauron, it would appear, right? So I'm not sure where they're going with his character. I'm assuming he's maybe a rival of Sauron, or maybe he's working for Sauron, but he's got his own stuff going on. Like, maybe if Halbrand is Sauron, which I'm starting to doubt now, just the way this character is going in the story, as we'll talk about later. I don't know. I don't know. It would make sense if Halbrand was maybe Sauron. While Sauron's away, this dude kind of starts, using his own powers and trying to be the new Sauron. I don't know. We don't know enough information. Looks like he isn't Sauron. Agreed. I don't think there's any way. I didn't really think he was Sauron to begin with, but I agree, Hugo. That's kind of my theory. I think it's a made-up character that doesn't really mean much in the end. It's just a filler, villain before Sauron, which I think is stupid. I think you should just introduce, this is the problem. If Halbrand's not Sauron, or if Sauron is not a character we've been introduced to yet, it's just like, this season's going to feel so pointless. Would be my problem, but we'll see. All right, so we then get to scene 4, which is going to be at this watchtower, and this is going to be with Arondir. I remembered his name this time, and Bronwyn, and they're kind of trying to rouse the troops. The orcs are coming. They're telling us to either bend the knee and leave, or they're going to kill us, basically. And it's whatever. And they're telling them to fight or whatever. It makes sense. Generic speech thing. It's all right. It's an all right, part. And then it all kind of goes downhill when the old evil dude, that was creepy in the last episode, goes, hold on a second. Our ancestors fought with, Melkor, Morgoth, whatever. We should be rejoicing Sauron coming and all that stuff. And we should go to Sauron. He will, we should just follow him again. Now, let's revert back a couple episodes to what happened to these people. And actually, hold on, let's talk about last episode as well. So last episode, we found out these people didn't have food. They were pretty much starving. And they come to this tower to take shelter. Now, why were they coming to take shelter at this tower in the first place? Because the orcs were slaughtering their animals, and taking their land. So, why would any of these people think now, hey, let's switch to the other side? Because they're definitely going to be good people to follow. It's not like they've already killed probably people in our own villages, killed our ways of having food, and is basically making us starve. Now, I talked about in episode 4, they kind of were stupid and didn't bring their food with them, which was dumb. But their motivations here don't make any sense, because this is how they should have done it. If they were going to have this be where you have the divide with the men or the or not the elves, the humans or whatever, then have it this way. When they're leaving the town or the villages, have a faction of it be like, no, we're not going to leave. We're going to stay, and we're going to pledge ourselves to Sauron and these orcs. And that's that. They don't, all of that. Instead of having them go all the way to the tower when they already knew that Sauron was coming, apparently, it was just, that whole idea felt dumb to me, and it just felt like, okay, let's just get some characters out so we can have another scene with Adar later on, but I actually thought this was a pretty good episode, really good, starting to feel epic. I'm glad you think that, Eric. I did not have the same opinions of you, but I'm glad you liked it. I thought the series clung more to universal themes, friendship, bravery, faith, not in the religious sense. It needs to be shown and not talked. Yeah, I think they've kind of gone away from a lot of the Tolkienian moral themes. That's something we're going to talk about with how characters interact later on with lying and kind of being like Game of Thrones. There's characters in this episode that are politically motivated that shouldn't be politically motivated. Or straight up lying, things that just don't happen and that are not themes of Tolkien's work are kind of implemented into this episode. Now, there are like certain characters that it makes sense for, but yeah, I don't know. Have you seen the cover for Fall of Numenor? It's said to be Alan Lee's best book yet. I'm tempted to skip the Silmarillion to read it, Ella, but I will do it the noble way yet. Yeah, I have not actually, but you should definitely give it a read in Silmarillion. It's pretty good. I wanted to see the Numenorian army steamrolling and humiliating Sauron with zero difficulty. It's too early to assume that this will definitely not happen. Hugo, I couldn't tell you because we don't know who Sauron is. There's been like, we keep getting this idea that Sauron's back. Sauron's back. But we don't see any inclination that Sauron in any form is in the story. Unless we're just going to guess. So I don't know. Me speculating on the future of this show is like, I just can't. I don't know what they're going to do with it. When you say the show is different from the books, are you saying that the origin story of Sauron has changed, or is just... Okay, so that is a big question to ask, Zen, because pretty much, if you look at the story, it's basically like... Let's put it in terms of A Song of Ice and Fire, okay? It's like they took Ned, who in the books is very honorable and all these things, and made him Jaime. Like, that is the easiest way to give you an explanation. Because, like, Galadriel, for instance, is not a warrior princess that's full of rage and all this shit. Like, Elrond is a different character. The elves as a whole are completely different in the way, especially in this episode, where they make, like, Gil-galad and Celebrimbor, like, schemers and liars, kind of. That's not the elf way. That's not what the elves are really built on. And Numenor, as a whole, their entire, like, outlook on the world is much different. Their conflicts that lead to their destruction are vastly different and more explored upon, like, in the Silmarillion. The part of the story we're at in Rings of Power, characters like our main characters, right? Elendil, Galadriel, the Harfoots, Arendelle. These characters do not really... They are not a big part of this time period. Like, Elendil is a big part, but not yet. His father is the one that's really more of a big player. And then later on, some of these characters start to come into the story, like Isildur. By the way, we haven't even gotten Isildur's brother, which bothers me because he's a major... It's like comparing season 5 to, like, book 4 and 5 of Game of Thrones. Because it's like, yes, it's kind of the same, but it's not at all. But yeah. Okay, let me see what you guys say. I mean, the show is absolutely different from the books. It's 10%. Yeah, agreed. If Halbrand is going to be a Nazgul, I would like it to be in a story similar to Godefrost and I can't even say the word you're talking about. Well, the story of Solomon and Asmodee's Ring, the story is more like... I could see that. I think the thing is with Halbrand, I'm not going to get into Halbrand yet. But hold that. I will get back into his character when we get to that plot. Also, you're correct, Raphael, on Galadriel's depiction. Yeah, Elendil saying the past is dead is kind of stupid. If they have rights to The Lord of the Rings, why change Galadriel? She's detailed pretty well in the Lord of the Rings books. Plus, I heard that Celebrimbor has been... Yeah. I don't know. Zen. Like, their excuses are, we don't have the rights to the Silmarillion. But you can still make a show... Like, you're never going to get the lore completely right. 100% right, just based on the show they did. But you could have made the story a Tolkien story without changing everything and making it stupid. I don't know. That's how I look at it from a lore point of view. But yeah. So let's get into the actual continue on. So we're going to get our first Numenor scene. Now, we have at the harbor, it's Elendil and Isildur. Now, remember at the last episode, we have that the Numenorians are going to go to Middle-earth, and they are going to help Galadriel and Halbrand in the Southlands kind of reclaim his I guess throne. And Isildur, who, remember, he got kicked off of the Sea Guard last episode, is like, hey, you should help me get on. You know, I'm trying to make a name for myself and all that stuff. And Elendil, rightly so, because if they're going to go with this characterization of Isildur, is just like, Isildur, you had your shot. Like, you can't just, you're going to get on this, like, military expedition type thing when you're pretty much a loser. Like, Isildur is a loser in this state, right? This is the equivalent to modern times to what Isildur is. Isildur is somebody that was going to go to college, or he was going to go into some sort of trade, right? Like welding or something like that. He drops out of it and then doesn't have a job. And now he's trying to get a very high up job while having no qualifications. So yeah, Elendil basically is just like, dude, there are people that have been in the Sea Guard serving for a long time, people that deserve this more than you to be able to explore Middle Earth. So yeah, that's kind of how that scene goes. I thought that was a fine scene because it actually made sense with Elendil, like, not kind of being disappointed in Isildur, because the way they've portrayed Isildur, which is much different in the book, we're not going to get into it, but from a show-only viewing, it makes sense from Elendil's perspective. Just to probably spice it up, probably Matthew. Agreed, Jesse. For Song of Ice and fans to understand, imagine if God had introduced a love affair between Robert and Catelyn, gave extra brothers to Tyrion, and made Sansa into a warrior, and Varys. That is a... There you go, Hugo. I don't know, Matthew. I really don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so next scene. So we have this scene now where Pharazôn is kind of walking, and there's people that are just basically out crying for Pharazôn to do something, and that we shouldn't be helping the elves, and we shouldn't be going to Middle Earth and all that. And the problem is, and this is the problem with doing public opinion type things in a story. We just saw in last episode how everybody was like, yay, I'll volunteer, I want to go to Middle Earth, and nobody objected to it. And now all of a sudden people don't like it. And I want you guys to remember that as we go later on into the episode, because this is something that is very important, right? So Pharazôn sees this and all that stuff, and yeah, nothing really comes of it, but he walks by. It's just important to know for later on. Now, Isildur's sister, or Elendil's daughter, disagrees with the queen and this whole venture, which is very weird and odd to me, because her family is quite the opposite. Her family is very traditional, and based on the facts that we should be interacting with the elves, and they are some of the few people, or maybe not few, but they are part of the faction that still is known as Elvish, and they are very much like, let's keep faith with the Valar and, you know, all of that, and the Undying Lands. Like, let's not break the ban, which they still haven't introduced the ban, by the way. So for only show watchers or not lore people, there's basically this idea that they cannot sail west any further than they can see Numenor. So if you can see Numenor when you're on the west side of the island, you're good. But if you go farther than that, you're breaking the ban that the Valar have kind of set on you, right? So now you're breaking that ban, right? Because Numenor is kind of the farthest west that anyone's supposed to really travel. That's a human or whatever, right? So, yeah. And it just seems almost out of left field. I felt like I was just missing a scene. Like, where did this come from? That Isildur's sister just, like, is completely against this and all. Like, where did it come from? Did I miss a scene in last episode where she got more into this, where she was not a fan of this? I don't know. So that felt weird. And then we see Halbrand is now allowed to work in the forge. So this was interesting as well. So this was very weird because last episode, we're now supposed to lead, I guess from this scene, that Halbrand was let out because he gave information to Pharazôn as to where Galadriel was going in the previous episode, to the tower, So then he in turn releases Halbrand, and he gets a guild thing for some reason. And it's not like Halbrand was like, oh, if you give me this, you give me that, I'll tell you where she's going. He straight up told the dude where he was or where she was going in the jail cell. And then, I don't know. So this seemed very contrived to me. But we see him making good, swords and stuff like that. So that was cool to see. Again, nodding at the idea that maybe he's Sauron, because Sauron is someone that is good at forging things, like, the One Ring. But, yeah. The Valar are huge assholes. That is correct. I hate scenes that have crowds murmuring in the background. Grinds my gears. Fair. You know what? Varys is a mermaid. I wish Galadriel had accepted the One Ring to show a middle finger to Manwë in his play. That would have been cool. That would have been funny. But yeah, so really awkward, like, kind of start to Numenor. I thought the Elendil kind of conversation with Isildur was fine, decent, and then the rest of it was kind of weird. I like that we saw that, people don't like the decision, but it contradicts things that we saw last episode, right? Okay, now, quick answer to who are the Valar, Zen. They're basically like the gods, more or less. Like, they're basically like the people that create Middle-earth and all that. Just, yeah, that's a simple answer, is that they are the gods. And let's move on. So we move into scene 7. And Halbrand is helping with this council and planning the movements of the troops, which, again, I thought was stupid. How would Halbrand know any idea, like, where we should land and or where the enemy is? I just thought that was dumb, in my opinion, but maybe Halbrand was telling them more of, like, what's the best port to land at? I don't know. I don't know. If let me know if you guys, like, took something different from that idea, but yeah. Also, so we get this idea here that Galadriel says that Halbrand is going to go with them to Middle-earth, and he's going to be crowned as the new king and lead his people. This is something Halbrand did not agree with. And when Miriel asks Halbrand about this, Halbrand begins to speak, and Galadriel just kind of shuts him down. Again, Galadriel is a very likable character, and yeah. So Galadriel's like, yeah, he'll do it. Don't worry. Obvious tension here. And yeah. So then, I talked about that already before, about how he gets the guild crest, about all that, and let's continue on. Now, Galadriel utters quite possibly the stupidest phrase I have ever heard in the show. And I know that maybe this is kind of out of anger and she was just being a smartass, and maybe she didn't mean it, but they're having this little argument, right, where Halbrand's like, I want to stay in Numenor. I didn't agree to do this and all this, and then Galadriel goes, oh, well, some would say that you're using me. And I heard that come out of her mouth, and I was like, Halbrand has literally wanted nothing to do with you since he's met you. Like, what? I don't know. That just, yeah. So then Halbrand justly's pissed off and just leaves. And that, for now, that relationship scene's burned until later on. But that was really stupid. But yeah. I just figured he knows the Southlands better than any of them. I guess. I mean, if we're going off the show logic, sure. In the Silmarillion, basically they have colonies like in Middle Earth and all that, so they would know. But we'll go with that, I guess. Oh, Matthew, don't worry. We're gonna get to the scene where Galadriel talks about she can't stop. That shit pissed me off. That was the scene that I was like, it had the most potential to be a good scene. Build Galadriel's character. It already done a really good job of building and giving us more information and giving us some, like, tension on Halbrand's character, and then they just completely screwed it up. That's true. The Stones quote was bad about Finrod. That was bad. Okay, so let's continue. Now we're back to our favorite plot here, the Harfoots in the woods. And they're now back with the colony, apparently, because we see, like, the leader and his wife and all that. And she basically is like, hey, let's just steal a wheel from him and just leave him to die. And I was like, what? So apparently they've been either helping them or they've just been going at a slow pace so that they could keep up. I'm not sure. They didn't really make it that clear. And it seemed really odd to me. It just seemed really weird to me because we haven't seen them together, and it made it very much implied in episode, I think it was the end of 3, that they were basically just being left behind. So this whole episode, that whole idea just was weird to me. But okay, I guess we'll look past it. Next thing we have is there's a Warg Attack, which was just like, okay. It was just whatever to me. I don't know. I was just like, and then the stranger shows up and saves the day by using some ground magic of some sort, which was kind of cool. And then, okay, this is a question I wanted to pose to the audience for you guys in chat. So there is a lingering shot, and they do this a lot, of his wrist. Is there supposed to be something on his wrist that we're supposed to know what it is? Like, I tried, like, pausing it. I couldn't really... I was watching it on, like, my phone because I was typing on my computer monitor. But I couldn't tell. Was there something on the stranger's wrist that's supposed to be an indication of maybe foreshadowing or clues to what he is? Let me know what you guys think, because it's kind of like we're supposed to pick up on something maybe, but I didn't, so I don't know. The Harfoots are the best and worst part of the show, in my opinion. Nori is cool, but most of the adult ones are terrible actors, in my opinion. I kind of agree with that, Eric. Like, I like them in certain scenes, and then other scenes I'm just like, this seems kind of weird and off. It kind of feels forced. But I think the stranger helped them catch up. Okay, maybe that makes sense, Scoobert. Maybe that's how they kept up. Okay, I can see that. I take that complaint away, or criticism. I take it away. Maybe that makes sense. Has Celeborn been completely forgotten? Well, if Celeborn is in the story, then that means Galadriel has a husband, and Galadriel is independent woman that don't need no man, so we can't have that. I don't like how the wards looked. I didn't think they were fantastic. I thought they were okay. I didn't have any major gripes with them. I thought they were just okay. Don't get me started on the looks. That you guys really did not like the look of the wargs. I thought they were okay. I didn't really have any too major criticisms of them. But yeah. Also, again, let me know if you guys picked up anything on what his wrist was supposed to mean, because I personally didn't know if we were supposed to see something from that, but the way they shot it made it look like we were supposed to, like, see, like, the mouth of, or not mouth sign, Mordor sign on his thing or something. I don't know. All right. So scene 9, we get back to Galadriel, and oh boy, so this is the scene. This is the scene. And Galadriel kind of walks up to Elendil. Elendil's instructing these guys how to fight. These look like maybe trainees or whatever. Now, this is what really bothers me. So, you know what Isildur's friends, the ones that also got kicked out of the Sea Guard? Why were his friends that were not allowed on the Sea Guard allowed on this trip, but Isildur isn't? That makes no sense. The whole idea of why Isildur doesn't get to go on the trip or whatever is because he's not in the Sea Guard. But yet his friends who literally also are not on the Sea Guard get to go. A little confusing to me. But then, okay, so Galadriel's just like, wow, these Númenóreans suck. They're garbage. I could destroy them. Like Númenor, okay, so this is where the whole thing's going to come in now, where I'm going to have a big rant about how they've portrayed Númenor. Because we're going to talk about this a little later. Oh, okay, sorry. I forgot to mention something. I forgot to mention something. Right? They mentioned that they are taking 4 ships to Middle Earth. 4. 4. They're gonna defeat Sauron with 4 ships and 500. What? The reason Sauron loses and ends up kind of just submitting to the Númenórean rule. Sorry, 5 ships. 5 ships. I think it was 4 though, Jesse, but we'll go with, we'll say it's 5. Either way, it doesn't matter. Could you imagine, okay, because this is how it goes in the Silmarillion. This is why Sauron ends up in Númenor. Sauron's looking at this, like, 4-5-man fleet. And goes, well, fuck, boys. We can't beat them. They got 500. You see that? They got 500 guys. 5 boats. Oh God, I gotta submit to their will. Like, oh God. It just blew my mind. I mean, I know the Númenóreans are strong and technologically advanced, but that seems ridiculously low. Agreed. Honestly, I think Galadriel is stoked for the free ride home element. I mean, but the thing is, she could have left it multiple times, but she's been insisting on getting all this stuff, and I don't know. How are black-skinned Númenóreans born when they are racist and don't mix with other races? Everyone in the island is white. How is the queen? To be honest, I really don't care about that. Like, at this point, like, they've broken so many inconsistencies that it's just like, well, whatever. Okay, Jesse, we're going to get there too. I had a major complaint with that as well. Okay, no, like, the Númenóreans are a very strong force, and they are very skilled, right? Like, this is where Aragorn comes from, right? This is his, like, bloodline, more or less, the Númenóreans. They are, like, the best men, like, human military force. They have the greatest navy, probably, of all time, right? In Middle-earth or Lord of the Rings history. And the fact that you put all this money into this show and all this, and we get 3 boats, technically 5 at the beginning, 3 boats, is fucking stupid. Like, now let's get back to the scene. Galadriel's like, okay, these guys are not great. It's like, dude, Galadriel, these are obviously younger guys that have not been trained that much yet. And does it matter anyway? Because you literally, with your bare hands, put 4, like, high guards of Númenor who probably fought in the first war because of the timeline, how compressed it is. They were probably the same dudes that fought Morgoth or whatever, in full armor and stuff, and you bitch at them. Like, what do you expect? Like, they've just nerfed the Númenóreans so much that they don't have the same, I guess, appeal to them. They're not as, this is how the Númenóreans are perceived by other people in Middle-earth, right? And they come to Middle-earth, right, in these little adventures, whatever, right? The Númenóreans are so advanced that they start teaching the men, especially in the early years, they start teaching the men of Middle-earth how to, like, farm and actually, like, live and just to advance, right? These Númenóreans were basically looked at as godly figures to these normal men. And the fact that they're being basically dressed up as morons is amazing. I would go Galadriel. Daemon has at least taken injuries, so they both had a lot of plot armor, but I think Galadriel wins. So yeah, yeah. And then Galadriel is telling these guys, hey, this is how you should kill an orc, guys. She basically recites the line that Jon tells Arya. Stick them with the pointy end. She goes, literally just stab them. Like, if it's that easy, why'd your brother die if he could just stab them? Oh, God. This scene just gave me headaches, okay? And then we have, like, Matrix Galadriel, okay? Also, this fight scene is shot the worst way possible. Like, you know how in The Last Jedi, there's this one scene in, like, the throne room scene where, like, Rey is about to get hit in the back, right? And the dude just, like, goes way over her. Like, there's a very iconic scene, if you watch that and you slow it down, where you can see a dude literally goes straight over her head when he has a wide open shot to her back. That's this. Like, literally, there's a comical part where Galadriel's kind of fighting off a dude, right? And there's another guy that's, like, to her right. And he's like this. He's like this. And then he just misses. He just misses. When Galadriel comes on the screen, I genuinely lose brain cells. Like, every other point of the story, all the other plots, I can find things I like about them and that I can get behind. This plot line sucks. She comes on the screen and I hate her more than I hated Joffrey. Like, at least Joffrey, I knew he was supposed to be a villain, and he was, made sense. This bitch is trying to say she's the hero, and she's the whatever, and all this, and she is the most annoying, just egotistical. Like, maybe this Galadriel becomes Sauron's queen. Alternate timeline. Because there's no way this Galadriel becomes the Galadriel that we see in, like, the Lord of the Rings or something like that. Like, it just, oh, God. And I even make a note that I'm like, maybe this makes sense if she has her Ring of Power, because that kind of slows time down and stuff. Maybe it gives her, maybe they can play off that and say it gives her superhuman, like, foresight, like she's a Jedi. But no. Just stab them and twist. Yeah. I wish they could have shown us more of Finrod. Yeah. There's a lot of things I wish they would have showed us more of. There's hundreds of ways to kill an orc. You can boil them, mash them, put them in a stew. Agreed. That's a good. Yep. I wish they should just use that line. Don't bring up that sacrilege, although we don't need the Star Wars sequels mixed. Hey, they're so intertwined, Matthew. This Galadriel would have definitely taken the 100%. 100%. Galadriel would have been like looking at that ring and been like, I can get vengeance on Sauron with that ring. I need it, Frodo. Strangles him. I wouldn't be surprised anyone if they take a Rome. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I fully understand the resentment of this Galadriel, but part of me loves it. So, like, this is my problem, Scoobert. If they wanted to do this kind of an elf character, have it be anyone else. Galadriel is the complete and utter opposite of the character they've made her. Just make up an elf. Put Arondir as this elf, and then just make him just. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna skip. We're gonna be here long. This is gonna be a long stream. So we then see Pharazôn with his son, and I actually really liked this scene. Okay. And I like the idea of Pharazôn's son thinking he's like, oh yeah, I know what's up. You need to start doing all this. And Pharazôn's kind of like, dude, you not see the opportunities we have in Middle Earth here? Like, do you not see how much we can advance? I kind of liked it. I liked it. Pharazôn seems like the only smart character in the entire Numenor plot. He, like, sees I can get personal gain off of this. And also, the people for now, seem like they're down for this Middle-earth trip. Let's say we go to Middle-earth and get our asses kicked. That's going to sway a lot of things politically. Even though we've seen some unrest, who knows, it switches from scene to scene. Also, the people of Numenor apparently really like seeing Galadriel in this fight scene, even though they're all racist towards elves. The problem with continuity and consistency, we don't care in this show. So I know no one knows for sure at this point. They're being cagey about it. But do you think the show is canonically with the Peter Jackson movie? Sorry, this point has probably come up. Maybe they're trying to, but I think it's more like a sequel with the Star Wars movies where it's supposed to be, but a lot of people don't consider it to be. So that's how I'll answer that question, Eric. Frodo offers the ring to anyone he sees despite being repeatedly not told not to. That's fair. How about Elendil? You don't like Elendil? I think Elendil's good. I think he's fine. I don't know. I think he's put in a shitty situation. I think Halbrand and Elendil are like the two characters I like, but they're just in the worst plot line. So for me to see them, I have to see Galadriel, and that just bothers me. So, yeah. Agreed, Matthew, but I think they're going to try to tie it into it. Is how I would say. They're going to try to say it is, but it's just not. We then get a little shot of Muriel and Tar Palantir's scene where he's like telling her not to go because there's going to be darkness in Middle-earth or something, and it's like, yeah, obviously they're apparently going to fight Sauron. No duh, idiot. like I'm sorry, that was just so comical because I'm sitting here, I'm like, wait, there's going to be some darkness in Middle-earth? This isn't just going to be a field trip? What? Like, obviously. I don't know. Yeah, it was just, that was another whatever scene that I didn't care about. So then we go to scene 12, and we continue on. And there's this stranger doing, so the Meteor Man, he's doing some, like, ice magic. He's, like, freezing this pool of water that his hand's in and his arm. And we don't really know why he's doing this. We don't know the reasoning. But more or less, Nori kind of comes to kind of help him or whatever, and she starts freezing. And then she gets knocked back. And then she runs away. So, is this the stranger's Breaking Bad moment? Or what? Because we don't really get any more scenes with them the rest of the episode. But, yeah, so that's our ending point for the Harfoots. I think it's maybe he was that was kind of what I perceived it as, Jesse, that he was healing his arm, but we're not really giving clarification. We don't know. So, who knows on that one? Wish they hadn't cut Amandil from the story. Agreed. So I didn't mind that fight scene, but the one slow motion shot was cringy, but at least not as bad as the one of the horse. Yeah, I agree on that, Eric. I agree. It's weird calling other people Eric because I'm going to be honest, Eric Thorpe, in my life, so my name is Eric. I have, like, spoken to one other Eric in my entire life. It's just not a common name where I live, I guess. I don't know. With only 500 men, they'll get there and turn back immediately. Agreed. It's like, okay, what if there is some sort of fight, right? And they breaks out. It's like, are you even gonna have enough men to man the ships to get home? Like, I don't know. Oh yeah, I know he's not involved, but I don't think that necessarily means it's not meant to be in the same. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of saying, Eric, is that I think they are trying to say it ties into it and it's in the same, like, continuity, like, area, but it's just the fans are gonna be like, no, no, sorry. All right. Now we get to Linden. So we have this meeting, and I thought this was a good scene because it's one of the few things that I feel like this episode has not done right, or this series has done right, is building tension and understanding how to continue the tension with a plot. So we have this idea that Durin and the elves are having the talk or whatever. They're having a dinner, and Gil-galad just starts drilling Durin. He's like, "So what you doing down there in those mines? We've been seeing you've been doing some things. What are you doing?" And Durin's like, just flips it on him like, what are you guys doing here in Linden? Like, why are you all up in our business? And Elrond's trying to defuse the situation. And then Durin, just like, great misdirect. He's just like, hey, this table, this is kind of made for what we bury our folk in. It's kind of disrespectful, Gil-galad, you piece of shit. I don't know. I thought the scene was really good. Just like with building tension between these two sides and also the plot of the Mithril. Thought that was a really good introduction into that kind of plot for the episode. So I thought that was good. Now, Gil-galad, after this little dinner, right, he just starts kind of drilling Elrond. Now, this is what I thought was the funniest part of the entire episode, I think, was just like, everybody keeps asking Elrond, hey, what are they doing in Moria? That's the reason we sent you, right? What do they have Mithril? And Elrond just keeps going, like, begrudgingly not answering the question. What do you think is the answer, my guys? Like, read a room. Like, the guy is basically telling you yes without saying yes. Like, if he's just not straight up like, nah, they ain't doing it. If his answer is like, oh, I can't tell you that, I did an oath, it's like, the answer is yes. And then it blows my mind even later, right? Because he just whips the Mithril out to Celebrimbor. I'm just like, he's trying to keep his oath so much, but then basically shows that, yeah, they have Mithril. I'm just sitting here just like, what is going on? What is going on? And like, so that part of it I was very confused about, okay? And then we have this whole idea where the elves are lying, right? Gil-galad and Celebrimbor are not only trying to deceive the dwarves and lying to them, but also lying to Elrond. And this is where I had a big problem with the depiction of the elves. This is not very Tolkienian at all. The elves, and especially the high elves, should not be acting this way where they're playing the Game of Thrones, basically. Where they're like, yeah, we gotta manipulate these people for our personal gain. And it just struck a wrong nerve with me. Like, I don't know. Let me know what you guys thought about the whole tree-infected scene where the elves are basically dying out. All new, made plots for the show, by the way, but it just struck me the wrong way. And I get what they're trying to say. They're trying to say because the elves are turning away from who they're supposed to be and that they're not, keeping up with the Sauron threat and all that, and they're going against probably the wishes of the Valar, that their tree is dying and that they are slowly fading or dying. But at the same time, I'm like, they are literally at the highest of their power. They don't begin to fade or anything until the third age type thing. So I don't know. So this just felt rushed and kind of odd because they needed to add some sort of reason for why the Rings of Power are going to be created. Right? I don't know. And it's something to me that it just kind of struck me the wrong way. But let me know what you guys thought on your opinions on how they handled basically Gil-galad and Celebrimbor, lying and deceiving Elrond, and also deceiving the dwarves as well. It's not even 500, it's 300 now. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's a good point. The Elrond Durin scenes are my favorite part of the show so far. This episode was no exception. I do think they are my favorite part as well for the show, but yeah, I still had problems with their plot. With that being said, I thought the scenery of like the Balrog, and the tree and all that was really good. I thought Linden always looks pretty good with the scenes we're getting with the elves and stuff. They all looked good. Durin and Elrond's relationship was very good in this episode. Really good dialogue. They have the best dialogue and best chemistry of the entire show. So I just want to say some positives, because I know this stream has been pretty negative. So I do want to give them credit where credit is deserved, on that idea of it. Numenorians are supposed to be superhumans, but in the show they are not really portrayed in that way. Agreed. They are basically like just regular Gondor soldiers that we see in the War of the Ring, more or less. Or is how they're being portrayed. That's not how they're supposed to be. Oh, I know that scene. I was like, what the fuck, talking about breaking his oath as he is breaking his oath. Agreed. It didn't make any sense. And oaths are pretty sacred. And they set that up in the last episode, and then Elrond just goes ahead and basically breaks it. So, yeah, I'm going to be interested to see how that kind of works out. I mean, I'm no expert, but the elves seemed a bit cagey to me in the movies. That's fair. That's fair. Oh, yeah, but by the way, going back to your previous comment, yeah, we do have the same name. The reason why the rings were created is that Celeborn loved Galadriel and she was unhappy in Middle-earth because all things die. That is the reason they should have developed in the show as all. Galadriel's ring is the only one. Yeah, agreed. And that's the whole idea here, Hugo, is that because we've made Galadriel a certain character and have not kept her the way she was in the book or the books, you can't do that storyline now because Celebrimbor and Galadriel haven't interacted at all. Right? Galadriel's not that character. Galadriel likes seeing things die. Like we've seen her killing, like, yeah, I don't know. And yeah, Mithril does go into the making of Galadriel's ring. It is one of the biggest uses that they ever used Mithril for, and I'm really actually excited to see how they do that in the show. All right. I talked about all the Elrond kind of stuff. All right, now we're back to Numenor. We have this Numenor party type thing, and I wanted to talk. I wrote a specific note here, is that Isildur, he kind of comes to his friends, and he's like, "Hey, let me in," you know, like, because one of the dudes that is his friends, Nick's Galadriel, and he's made a lieutenant, which I thought was stupid again, but Isildur just comes off as a loser. He comes off as someone that is a failure in life and can only get further in life off the backs of better people. That's how he comes off. For me anyway, that's how he comes off. And it's a very bad way of perceiving the character based upon how Tolkien kind of retconned his character. Because to start with, it was kind of like Isildur was a very like morally gray character. And then Tolkien later on kind of makes him a tragic hero type, where Isildur is very much a hero until he gets the ring. And for instance, like, let's note some of the heroic things Isildur does, right? So we'll just quote the big one. So you see the tree, right? That is in Numenor. That's kind of this big tree or whatever. It's the one that I forget the queen's name is at this point. Whatever her name is, where she looks back and she sees all the petals kind of falling off. Well, there gets to be a point where they're going to get rid of this tree, right? And Isildur, knowing this, sneaks in, gets a seed of the tree, or a seedling of the tree, so that they can plant something else, or plant another one. And he almost dies. Right? He almost dies doing this. So he's definitely a hero that, because of the ring and the temptation, he can't overcome it because of that. And we just don't, that's not been really portrayed with Isildur. And if you're even going to go like a route with Isildur, don't make him the way they've made him. He just, I don't know. Maybe he'll have a switching character later on, but as of right now, not a fan. Isildur looks like Julian Casblanc. That's a good one. That's a good one, Jack. I don't think Isildur is a great character. He's definitely a fallen hero. Agreed. He just comes off as a dreamer to me. Agreed. Like, he has, like, ideas, but he doesn't work for any of them. And he doesn't, like, do anything. I don't know. But, yeah, so we see a scene with his friends, and, yeah. They don't allow him to get on the boat. So then this leads to the next idea. Kemen, so this is Pharazôn's son. I guess he's just a terrorist now, because he goes to one of the boats, and he basically lets oil spill on the floor, and then he's going to put the fire on it, and he's going to basically blow up the ship. Okay? And in the process of doing this, Isildur is on the boat. He is trying to sneak onto the mission or whatever. And Isildur sees him doing this, tries to get him to stop. The lantern or whatever goes onto the oil, and boom. Everything blows up. Or maybe it was wine. I don't remember. It's some liquid that basically made the ship blow up. Has Anarion made an... Nope. Hugo, Nope. He's a major character to the story, and he's not been even mentioned, so that's good. But yeah, so then what ends up following is we see this big... It's like, it kind of reminded me of, like, the Blackwater, but just a very minor scale. But these two ships blow up, apparently, and yeah. And one thing I want to note is, apparently there's nobody guarding these ships. Like, anybody can get onto these ships, so that's one thing. And even if, let's say there are, Kemen just possibly killed them. He possibly just got people killed, right? We're told, I don't know if it's told that no one died or got injured or anything, but whatever. So Isildur and Kemen come off in this kind of like rowboat thing, and Elendil's like, what happened? All this stuff. And Isildur basically and Kemen basically lie that like they were passing by or something, and Isildur rescues Kemen. Why the hell would Isildur lie for a guy that could have gotten multiple people killed, just did an act of literal treason and or terrorism? Like, it's mind-boggling. The only thing I can think of is Isildur's like, well, why were you on the boat, Isildur? And you'd be like, well, I was trying to sneak on. That's not, like, it just shows me, like, Isildur in this show is not a hero. He is not even, like, he's just a loser. Like, he's a guy that he has no honor. He has no, he's not trustworthy. He just, so this is just stupid. And then this whole thing, this whole scene or idea was just literally to get Isildur on the boat. Like, what was the point? Why not just keep Isildur? If this is how we're gonna get Isildur to go on to the trip, just keep Isildur in the Sea Guard. Have him like have issues with maybe his captain stuff. But keep him on the Sea Guard, and then eventually, he stops going with this captain and then starts working for his dad. And then bam, there you go. He's on the boat. We don't need this contrived nonsense. So yeah, that was stupid. Just dumb. It was just dumb. Yep, Raphael, Galadriel, this is not the right character. It's just, yeah. So then we have a council again. I made a note here that they have only 3 ships to go to Middle-earth with, apparently now, which is stupid. And then they're like, okay, they're having some kind of doubts. They're kind of having some doubts about whether they should go to Middle-earth now. And they're going to say, well, reconvene in the morning, and Halbrand should be here and confirm that he's going to do all this stuff, right? Okay, makes sense. We take a step back. Well, let's look at this decision and not be so rash. Right? And, okay, so we'll get back to that. That's a major plot point I want you guys to remember as well, but we'll get back to it. Numenor equals discussion about human nature, life, death. Imagine the scene of a family that has lost a loved one to old age and an immortal elf appears, but no. Agreed. And that's the whole idea with Numenor, is there's supposed to be this idea that Numenor has slowly throughout the years become more and more corrupt and against the ideas of the Valar. They start out being very nice to people in Middle Earth, and then by the end they're enslaving them basically and taking their resources. They are supposed to go from an ideology of being friends with elves and respecting the Valar a ton, and they kind of just descend into hating the elves because they get to live forever, and how is this kind of fair to men who have to die, and all of that. And there's that kind of moral like argument there, and it just becomes more, and it increases in tension, and you have two sides that kind of come out of it, the faithful and the kingsmen, and we're not getting any of that, right? They've killed the entire tension of where that's supposed to be, and they still have chances to fix that, but we'll see how they go with that. So we'll get to the Celebrimbor scene now, and this is where he breaks promise to Durin while showing the mithril to Celebrimbor, which made no sense. And at this point, I was kind of fed up with the oath thing. It's like, you've not only shown someone else that mithril is being mined, you also are now constantly basically being like, well, I can't tell you because I have this oath, but like, it's like, dude, nobody cares. Okay? Like, at this point, like, a normal person that wasn't completely stupid would understand, okay, they have mithril. Celebrimbor has a good kind of conversation with Elrond, kind of about his dad and stuff like that and all that, and that was good. Also, really good facial acting by Elrond, showing kind of the, kind of his internal conflict, I guess. I thought was really good, and that was a really good job. Our boy, young Ned Stark, did a pretty good job in his acting in that scene, so I wanted to give him big props. So scene 19. This is going to be the most disappointing scene of the entire episode and maybe of the entire season. So there's a scene where Halbrand and Galadriel, Galadriel's kind of going back to talk to Halbrand because she needs him, right? Numenor is not going to support Galadriel on this unless they have a king or someone, the people that can rally behind, which even in and of itself is kind of stupid, because if Numenor comes over, helps these people stay off Sauron, they already are going to be looking at the Numenorians like as superhuman or godly figures, to where they could just plant a puppet ruler and be fine, which is what Farazan basically wants to do anyway. So you really don't need Halbrand, but yeah. So that's a minor nitpick, I guess, but it's something I wanted to say. So we get to this idea, and Halbrand is basically like, Galadriel, you don't know me. Like, you don't know the things I had to do to survive. Things that are unspeakable, that you would think differently about me if you knew. This was very good character development for Halbrand. It was a great scene, good acting by the actor who plays Halbrand. This was, in my opinion, some of the best writing and acting, facial acting, that we've gotten in the entire show. I really liked the first part of this scene. I thought it was great. Like, and that's me being genuine. I liked that part of the scene. Okay, and then it kind of finishes, and Halbrand's like, Galadriel, why do you keep fighting? Why do you keep doing the things you're doing? And we get to Galadriel, and Galadriel starts going, well, my men mutinied against me. My friend and my king conspired to send me away, and all this stuff. And then she ends with, I don't think they can tell the difference between me and the enemy. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? These dudes mutinied from you because you're leading them basically on a goose chase, and they've already exceeded their orders from the king. Now, if we're going off the book, right, where there's no way in hell they would leave Galadriel, and Galadriel is basically royalty, they would never do that. But based off the show's logic, that's what happened. Galadriel is kind of in the wrong in that situation, right? It's kind of, you can go both ways. And then the other scene where they send her off, it's like, yeah, again, we're going back to stupid decisions, but whatever, okay? because Gil-galad does not have the right to do that, to basically force Galadriel to go away. Like, Galadriel is literally a princess of the elves. Like, she's super important. So that bothered me. But yeah, so then and then also thinking that they think somehow that she's like Sauron. What? I just was like, dude, the dialogue here was terrible. And then I thought they were building up to something where they were gonna say Galadriel doesn't know how to deal with her emotions. You know, she has all of this anger and all of this pain that she feels, and she doesn't know how to deal with it. So the only way she knows how to deal with it is by fighting, is by doing what she knows and what she's good at. Because that would be a good way of explaining her actions within the show. We're not going to talk about lore, because we've already departed the lore with Galadriel's character, where it makes sense for Galadriel's character while giving her a bit more of a character. And what did they utter instead? She goes, I fight because I have to, or I must, or something like that. It's like, there was such wasted potential in this scene. Like, you started out so well, and if you had just changed Galadriel's response to something that was really good for her character development, this could have been a top tier scene that changes the entire outlook of Galadriel's plot. But instead, they blow it like usual. So, let's move on. Now, scene 20, we go to the villagers going to Adar. And the old guy basically walks up to Adar and is like, hey, we will serve you, O Sauron the Mighty, or whatever. And Sauron's not happy. Or not Sauron, Adar's not happy. He's like, who do you think I am? Like, and basically gets real pissed off. Basically has this old dude kill a kid, which I'm not sure if he actually kills the kid or not. It's implied he does. Kind of dark for a Rings of Power show that's been pretty not dark, but I'm assuming he kills the kid. So again, maybe more foreshadowing that Adar is not in league with Sauron and all of that. So yeah, pretty quick scene. And we don't learn anything about Adar really. We just know he's hardcore. That's about it. But yeah. Okay, let me look at the comments. You are also correct, Hugo, about Numenor being like right-wing national. It literally felt like a sketch from like a comedy show or something. The hobbits speak of friendship, companionship in that ritual feast, remembering the departing, such beautiful and timeless themes, but were lost where they abandoned Nori's family. Yeah, I don't know. But then apparently they didn't abandon Nori's family. I don't know. It seems that they will also drop the Anantar Lord of Gifts plot, in which Sauron befriends the elves. Everybody already knows, respects he is back before the... Yeah, I don't know. Before the rings are forged. I don't know. I can't even speculate on this show anymore. I think that's one of the best parts of the Second Age, and they're just probably going to just completely just not do it. Imagine seeing Nori's family being attacked, but all hobbits set an example of virtue and courage. They band together and don't let the wolves near. Don't leave them behind. That's right. Yeah. Okay, so even put it this way, Raphael, right? I'm coming at this from more of a Game of Thrones, like, let's take the dark route to it, where what if, because of them being left behind and these wolves attack, right, that somebody in her family dies. Let's say her dad dies. Now there's going to be this moral rift in Nori's character where she's like, where she struggles to be optimistic, where she struggles to be part of this Harfoot lifestyle, and that leads her maybe to leave the Harfoot clan and make her own decisions and all of that. That's not really a Lord of the Rings story, but that's not really a Tolkien story or way of going about things. But it's a way that if you're not going to tell a Tolkien story, which they're not already, make it interesting. Give these characters some development. Give them something for us to relate to, where we feel like some empathy towards these characters. Exactly how I talked about with Galadriel, where because of loss, she feels such anger and pain and all of these things that lead her to be more impulsive, to lead her to be always fighting. Give us a reason to like these characters, or maybe not even like them, but at least understand them and relate to them. They very much struggle to do that. So we go back and we're at the tower, and I don't remember the kid's name. I know it was a really basic name, but I forgot his name because I don't care about his character. Is talking with the other elf. I forgot his name again. It's something with an A, but they're talking, and he's telling him how to shoot a bow and all this stuff, and it's a whatever scene. It just felt like filler. Like, I just didn't care. And then because of all of this, the kid, I guess, trusts the elf now and gives him the dark blade, or shows him the blade or whatever. And apparently it's a key. So at this tower, there's kind of this thing where it could be a key. His name is Theo. Thank you, Jesse. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I didn't see that coming, but I'm okay. That makes sense, I guess. And the elf character here tells Bronwyn that, hey, this is a key to something. I don't know, or we know what, right? We know it's to this like thing over here, but we don't know what it's going to unleash. And Bronwyn, just out of nowhere, right? Evil sword, probably shouldn't use it. Just flips character very quickly. And goes, yeah, let's use it without knowing anything. Right? Let's just use it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, this is what our enemy is trying to get. And you think it's a good idea to instantly just use it. I thought that was really dumb. The elf is Theo's dad, right? I don't think so, no. Maybe? I don't think so, but I don't know. I don't know, man. So I thought that was pretty weird. I don't know. The sword was pretty whatever. Raphael, I could have seen that as well, but I don't know. They butchered it. Hi, Young Wolf. How are you? We're just doing a good old rant and, summary / review of the entire episode of Rings of Power Episode 5. I saw an article saying that Nori might be the Baggins ancestor, and that's one of the reasons why they tie into the story. Matthew, I'll be honest. I would literally hate that if they did that. I would just be like, no, just stop. Just stop. And then, okay, so isn't the other part of that theory, Matthew, that since Gandalf, right, saying that, like, it's like, let's say the stranger is Gandalf, because he was with these like Hardfoots for so long, that's kind of why he becomes interested in the Baggins, especially, and all that. Isn't that how the theory goes? Theo weirds me out. Me too, Eric. Me too. His dad ran off. He's a bastard. That's what I thought. I knew. I was pretty sure that the elf was not his dad. Then we also get just an orc like marching scene to set up the next episode, which I was like, okay. Nothing really spontaneous or anything interesting there. My next thing is, why did they build the tunnel if they were just going to attack at night anyway? Thought that was kind of weird, but oh well. I don't know. Kind of interesting to me, I guess. Nori becomes leader of the Hardfoots and exiles all of the... What? Oh god, Jesse, we gotta stop. All right, so scene 23. I need a drink of water. Hold on, give me a second. I keep thinking, where are the Rings of Power? We're more than halfway through the season and nothing. The only reference to elven motifs in the creation of the rings was the dialogue of Celebrimbor. Here's the thing, Raphael. I have no answers for you on that. This is not the way I would have done the story. You know what? That gives me a good question. That gives me, not a good question, but a good time to plug someone, okay? So, there was a YouTuber that he did like 2 or 3 videos talking about how he would write Rings of Power, more or less. And he wasn't like a direct comparison to the show or anything like that. But I thought he did a really good job. If I can find it, I'm gonna like tell you his name so you guys can watch it because I thought it was really good. Did Tolkien lore that did it? No, I've been watching Tolkien lore a lot though, but he was really good. I don't remember his name, but he does basically a play-by-play of each like episode how they should be, and every season how they should be, and he did a really good job. But I can't remember what his name was. All right, so we have Elrond and Durin, and Elrond basically tells Durin all about the issues of the elves, and Durin kind of decides to help. It's a good scene, right? It's a good scene where we see Elrond and Durin's friendship, even though Elrond basically exposed Durin's secret, which, well, maybe, I don't know. We'll see. And Durin kind of was like, yeah, we're going to help save you, Elrond, and all this stuff. And I thought it was a good scene. So I thought good scene between Elrond and Durin, no problems with it. And not much else really to talk about. Next scene. So we have kind of like our last real scene of the episode or part. Halbrand, we see a scene where he basically puts the I don't remember what Galadriel gives him exactly, but basically Galadriel gives him something, he picks it up, and he basically takes it, and that basically signifies that he is going to help in the campaign in the Southlands. Now, you know how we had all this indecision in the last meeting where we're like, hey, let's do it in the morning? That was Pure Life Water. I don't have Aquafina, I ran out. They don't show the meeting at all, and it just skips to it just skips to they're on the boat and they're ready to go. And I'm just like, oh, all right. I guess there wasn't really a discussion. It was more of just if Halbrand shows up, we're going. Really weird. And then to finish off my last point here, I wanted to say the Numenorian armor I thought looked amazing. I thought it looked really awesome, especially kind of the helmets and stuff. I thought that really looked very good, so I think they did a good job on that. Stranger looks like Gandalf. Halbrand looks like Viggo Mortensen. Maybe we'll get like a Fellowship of the Ring, like comparison. We'll get Halbrand. We'll get our boy the Stranger together. We'll get the Harfoots together. We'll have a nice little Fellowship of the Ring band. Show should have been called Lord of the Rings: The Dark Years. Oh boy, you need to stop. You got to stop, Jesse. I'm liking the show just as badly as I liked Game of Thrones Season 8. The difference is that one already started awful. I'm kind of there with you, Hugo. I'm not Game of Thrones Season 8 levels because I was way more invested in Game of Thrones, but yeah. That shockwave that repelled the wargs, why didn't they use this model instead of the Lion King's hyena? It reminded me of Gandalf's bull in the Bridge of Hazun from one. Yeah, agreed. Maybe that's what they were going for. I'm not sure. Did you know Tolkien typed Lord of the Rings with 2 fingers? Really? That's actually, I did not know that, but that's really cool. Did anyone watch The Hobbit yesterday being The Hobbit Day? I did not. Fun fact, Jeff Bezos' son is a big fan of Tolkien and asked his father to make sure the show would be great and fails to the source material. Yeah, his boy's traumatized. But yeah, no, yesterday was Hobbit Day. So, I also wanted to say, Galadriel's armor looked really good. Again, why is Elendil's daughter pissed? Don't know. I don't know why I guess she's a king's person, or that like part where they don't want to interact with the elves for some reason. Don't know why. Very loose reason for why Isildur is allowed to go. Again. And then, where is Honorian? Honorian, however you say his name. This is Elendil's other son, his youngest son. Isildur's brother. Where is he at? Major character. But, yeah. So, that is the entire episode. We went all the way through, going through each individual scene, talking about my ideas on every single one. I'm going to kind of do a little brief summary Not of the episode, but of like my thoughts on the season and the show as a whole, and then we'll go ahead and get through it. Everything looks like Sauron and Halbrand will use the forces of Numenor to destroy Adar and pervert the fallen elf's original plan. Sauron simply wants the enslavements of this race. Okay. I think that's a very bad departure off of source material that could have been good, but all right. Eric Thorpe coming in with a very controversial statement. Got season 8 is mostly pretty great, in my opinion, even though it's the weakest season. I'm glad that you liked it and found some enjoyment out of it, Eric. I did not find enjoyment in it. The season finale when Bran was made king, I literally yelled at the screen. Like, I genuinely was watching with my dad, who had already watched it once before I got home, which I can't believe he did that. We'd always watch them together. And the final episode of the entire series, he decides to watch it without me. But it got to the part where they're like, because I'd read the leaks, and the leaks said, oh yeah, Bran's going to become king. I was getting Tyrion's doing his speech, right? And he goes like, who has the best story? Then Bran the Broken. I was literally, this is my reaction. I was like, who has a better story? Any person sitting in this room right now has a better story. I'm more interested in the Dornish dude that popped up story than Bran's story. You mean the dude that was gone for a season that they couldn't figure out anything to do with him? Yeah. I just yeah. But yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it though, Eric. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It traumatized me. Are you going to get the House of the Dragon Funko Oh god, here we go. Here we go, Young Wolf. Here we go. I have a question if there's time. Who do we think are the people tracking down the stranger, the creepy looking elves? I don't know, man. Scoobert, my best guess is there's some sort of priests or servants that served Melkor before, or were like a cult following of him, that are basically looking for this power that maybe they think could be like resurrected Morgoth or something like that. That's my best guess. 5 out of 10 for me. That is also my ranking. So let me I have a paragraph written. I'm going to read it out to you guys, and this is kind of my final thoughts. This episode still struggles with problems for the entire season, lacks actual plot or story direction, no characters we actually are attached to or care about outside of the dwarves and or Elrond. Plot holes and continuity errors, especially in Numenor. Galadriel was such a missed opportunity to improve character in the episode. Durin and Elrond plot was pretty solid. Even their changes in lore and the plot line were fine at certain parts. The Hardfoots in this episode were pretty irrelevant, added nothing to the story for the moment, could change in the future. Show is just a very beautiful, hollow experience for the most part. The Elves in the Southlands plot was pretty underwhelming. Still no info on Adar, and nothing really changed since the end of episode 4, outside of there's a key. Overall, episode felt like filler besides Linden plot. Take away this episode and what changed from the end of last episode. End of last episode, we already covered they were going to Middle-earth. Harfoots still don't matter. And Arendir plot is basically the same. Orcs are attacking soon with added key blade thing. For a show covering a massive stretch of time, we don't have the time for filler, and that is what the episode really was. It wasn't as bad as episode 4, but it wasn't an improvement either. My final rating is a 5 for the episode, moving up from last week's rating of a 4. So that is kind of my overwhelming thoughts on, or not overwhelming, but overarching themes and or ideas on the episode. About Numenor, what is the attitude that shows the departure from the Elven tradition? The show's problem is talking too much and not showing. Agreed. Like, they haven't shown us why they don't like the elves. So why are they racist towards the elves? Like, they literally gave us reasoning of because they're going to take our jobs. Do you think I'm joking? They have bobbleheads. Oh, God. Young Wolf, maybe. I'll give you a maybe on that. I mean, from Tyrion's point of view, I can understand why he would think Bran had the most interesting story. I guess. Solid like jelly. I have to agree on Hugo on that one. But yeah, so that is my thoughts on Rings of Power episode 5. I will be back with, House of the Dragon episode 6. I'll be honest, guys. I'm very nervous about episode 6. Like, just based on the way it's set up, I'm either going to really like the episode or I'm going to really hate the next episode. Now, I don't know, man. House of the Dragon is scaring me for the next episode. But I hope it's going to be good. But I'll see you guys probably around 9:30, 9 o'clock for that stream as well. Not to ruin the joke, but wasn't the point that Bran had all the stories? It was kind of, the idea was kind of like he had the idea where he could tell stories or something. And I'm just like, what are we talking about? And even if we're talking about like Bran's character, we're not getting into it. I could talk about season 8 all day. But yeah, so we'll be back also next week with our normal. Eric, I'm from another country, so no. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking to me, Hugo. I was like, what? I was so confused there. But yeah, so we'll be back with our normal stream on Friday again with Rings of Power. We're getting close to the end of the season for both shows, I guess. So Eric Thorpe, okay. Up to this point, House of the Dragon has been good. It's been very good. But the time skip and the way they ended the last episode scares me a little. Because there's a lot of things they've left open-ended, and it reminds me a lot of the later seasons of Game of Thrones. Like, it reminds me a lot of, like, how we're kind of rushing through things to get to the things that, But it's different because you liked the later seasons of Game of Thrones, so it's just different for me. Yeah, I'm pretty nervous about the next episode. I won't lie. I'm a little stressed out because I want House of the Dragon to do well. It's not like Rings of Power where I'm like, yeah, I love Lord of the Rings, but I already knew Rings of Power I was not gonna like the show and I didn't think it was gonna be good. House of the Dragon, I have very high expectations for, and I have very, yeah. And yes, Scoobert, just like with Rings of Power and how critical I am of Rings of Power, that will be in my notes. If we do not get an explanation as to why he did not get executed in the next episode, I'm gonna talk about it because that's stupid. But yeah, all right. I am going to end stream. I need to eat dinner. I haven't eaten in like a good amount of the day, and I'm ready. I'm hungry. So I will talk to you guys all in the next stream, which will be Sunday. Also, if you guys wanted to check out the video on House of the Dragon I did today earlier, it was basically a video talking about the importance of Sunday's episode and why it could either make or break the show. Kind of talked about it a little bit on stream, but yeah. So thank you guys all for watching.